Hey guys, welcome along to the show. We're getting into the Transformers Generation 1 Season 2 once again with a review on an episode called Prime Target. This here is a great little episode. I really did enjoy this one, and a little bit of a step back in time because this, obviously, the Transformers come out in the early 80s, and the United States and the Soviet Union were at, not the best of friends, let's just say. And in this episode, there is a big game hunter called Lord Chumley, who at the beginning steals a top secret Soviet aircraft and, puts the whole world into a political bad space where, the potential of World War III essentially could happen. And so it turns out this guy has stolen this. He's a millionaire game hunter essentially, and the big prize that he wants to get his hands on is the jewel of his collection. It's going to be the head of the Autobot leader, Optimus Prime. So cut back to America, and Bumblebee tracks are out doing something, and they see the news report they're walking past a shop window and see all these TVs, and people have gathered around, and they're seeing the news that the superpowers on the planet are at each other's throats over this top secret aircraft being stolen. And while they're checking this out, they see a couple of Decepticons, so they go to check that out, and find out that it was a hologram but been used by Lord Chumley and his lackey Dinsmore, and they end up getting captured. And when the Autobots head out to try and find Trax and Bumblebee, a whole load of the other Autobots are also captured and taken away. And while the search is going on, Prime hears all these radio broadcasts from the other Autobots asking for help. They're getting captured by someone that Optimus Prime doesn't know who it is at this stage. Obviously people are going to start thinking that's the Decepticons, but Prime throughout the episode is, I don't think it's the Decepticons. I don't know why, but I don't think they're responsible for what's happening here. So while he's hearing all these radio responses from the other Autobots asking for help, he orders a retreat to go back to Autobot headquarters to work out what's going on. And while they're trying to figure out what's happening, Cosmos radios in with a report on something that he's discovered about the disappearances of the other Autobots, but his transmission is broken up by Lord Chumley himself, and he shows Optimus Prime where the Autobots are at. He's got them trapped in like a torture chamber set up, and challenges Optimus Prime to come and save them, because he wants to have the chance at capturing Optimus Prime. So Prime accepts the challenge and tells the other Autobots he's going in there on his own, and if Chumley wants a one-on-one fight, he's going to get it. We get to see the angry side of Optimus Prime in this episode, and he really does. If you remember the 80s, Knight Rider, there was the car, there was KITT, Michael Knight's computerized car. Then there was the evil version of KITT, which was named Car, was voiced by Optimus Prime, just a real evil robot in the show. So Optimus Prime in this episode really does sound like Car. It's the exact same voice, but it's just the emotional level from being the good person that he is in Transformers is, just basically anger, and you get a lot of that out of Optimus Prime in this episode. So he goes to Chumley Manor. This is obviously what Cosmos had found out where they were at, so he knows where to go. He gets there and he has to go through this whole mess load of different challenges of all these different robots and a huge creature that's sent out there to try and capture him. At one point he is almost captured by an energy net, but he manages to grab hold of a chain and electrify it off the power cables running across the top of the plant. It's all set out like a Chumley's approximation of what Cybertron would look like, and he manages to break out of this net. But while all this is happening, of course, what's the Decepticons doing in this episode? Well, Megatron is keeping an eye on what's happening here, and he's like, for a flesh creature, this guy is brilliant. He wants to make contact with him to help in taking out the Autobots. And Starscream's like, well, of course, he's brilliant. He's done more in 2 days than you've done in 2 years. So Megatron, of course, isn't happy, knocks Starscream in his ass and calls up the Triple Changers, Astro Train and Blitzwing, and he sends them off to make contact with Dinsmore and pass on his plans, more or less. Let's join forces, beat the Autobots. So when they get there, Optimus Prime's still getting through all these different traps. There's one where this girl is chained to this claw mechanism, and Optimus Prime isn't stupid enough to go save her. He realises that this is an R1 of Dinsmore's, Chumley and Dinsmore's traps, and he's like, not today, walks off. And of course, Astro Train and Blitzwing come up behind him, and they're like, we can't understand why he didn't save this human. So Blitzwing decides, he's going to stick his foot into this. Pretty much it's a giant robotic version of a bear trap, essentially, and the human female in there is a robot. And he sticks his foot on and crushes her. There's an explosion. The thing wraps around his leg and blasts all this gunk up around him, disables him, and Astro Train is trying to help him escape, and Prime turns around and looks, sees it to him, and he's like, wow, a booby trap that actually captures boobies. So off he goes. We go through some more sequences of the Autobots in the torture chamber, and Bumblebee sends out a homing signal for Optimus Prime to follow to get in there. But during one of the next attempts from these giant robots that are fighting against Optimus Prime, he gets shot in the back by Blitzwing, and Chumley sees this. He's not happy. At this point, as far as he's concerned, Optimus Prime's been knocked out, maybe killed. So he's not amused that these Decepticons have taken the thrill of victory away from him, and he turns his robots on Astro Train and takes him out. They end up in the Chumley Towers, essentially, chained to the wall, and their weapons are deactivated. And Chumley is like just angry at these pair, and then they're trying to say, like, we came here on behalf of Megatron to try and join forces with you, and like Chumley's like, I don't care, I wanted to capture Optimus Prime on my own, you've taken away the thrill from me. At which point on the monitors he sees Prime is back on his feet and heading towards Chumley Tower. So he basically manages to get through everything Chumley throws at him and get into the main chamber where he's at. Dinsmore takes to his heels, goes and hides, and realising that he's running out of options, Dinsmore asks the Decepticons, will you help me fight him? And they're like, yes, of course. So he lets him out, and of course they turn on him, and they're like, let's see how you feel about getting hunted. And he's on his knees running, trying to hide, at which point Optimus Prime enters the room along with all the other Autobots. Of course, first thing he's going to do when he gets in there is get his friends out of trouble. So they all turn up, firing their weapons at the Decepticons. Of course, their weapons are deactivated, so they can't fight back, so they retreat and get out of there. And Prime, he's like, there's no point following them two. He's like, this is a trophy I'm looking for. So we cut from that there to the Soviet Union, and the top secret fighter jet has been returned to its owners, and on the nose cone of the fighter is Lord Chumley tied up and sweat running out of him. So the finishing shot of the episode is the Autobots transformed and rolling out as usual, and you hear the news report that, you know, world leaders have commended the Autobots for, you know, saving the day essentially, and the fighter was stolen by a huge big game hunter and has been returned, and the US and the Soviet Union are now back to just the nice usual way of going, and there's no more stress between the two superpowers. So it's a really, really good episode. I really did enjoy this one, and I think now I did hear of this episode before. I was very much aware of its existence, but I think this is the first time I've actually watched it properly, and so good.